countries often try to control what goods come in and out, not just for economic reasons, but for political ones too. One way they do this is through trade barriers, rules that make imports more expensive or harder to access. These might include regulations, quotas, or one of the most common tools, tariffs, which are essentially taxes on imports. Tariffs are certainly nothing new. In ancient Athens, grain imports were taxed to raise money for the state. And in 14th century England, Edward III banned imported woolen cloth to encourage a domestic weaving industry. During the Industrial Revolutions of the 18th and 19th centuries, trade barriers became widespread across Britain, Europe, and the United States. The goal was to protect homegrown industries, limit competition, and sometimes even stop the export of new technologies. Tariffs were also a major source of government income, but over time they were gradually replaced by other forms of taxation, like income tax. But tariffs have often been controversial. One of the earliest large-scale rows about them happened during the 19th century. At the time, the UK government introduced tariffs on imported wheat to protect wealthy landowners and farmers from imports of cheaper wheat from abroad. But these so-called corn laws meant higher bread prices for low-paid workers, sparking major public opposition. Today, higher prices for consumers remain a common side effect of tariff barriers, especially when no substitute products are available. This adds fuel to a wider debate about the question of protectionism versus free trade. The repeal of the Corn Laws in 1842 marked the beginning of Britain's move away from protectionism and towards something much closer to free trade. At the time, supporters of free trade hoped that if Britain dropped its trade barriers, other countries would follow. But both Europe and the United States remained protectionist, and between 1870 and 1913, their economies grew more than twice as fast as Britain's. For Britain, moving toward free trade in a protectionist world proved expensive. And today, the consequences of moving toward protectionism in a free trade world remain to be seen. Large-scale wars also impact trade. After World War I, countries neglected trade, a mistake they didn't repeat. By the end of World War II, global powers were already planning a new economic order based on free trade. Free trade agreements are one of the main tools used to reduce tariffs and other trade barriers, but countries have to balance both shared and conflicting interests, which is why these agreements take years to negotiate. Modern economies have many moving parts, some of which need protection, but these protections are now usually negotiated rather than imposed. For example, in 2018, when the free trade agreement between the United States of America, the United Mexican States, and Canada replaced the previous North American Free Trade Agreement. It included a negotiated level of protection for Canadian dairy farmers, with U.S. and other producers gaining tariff-free access to up to 3.6% of the Canadian market. The agreement also included quotas for vehicles produced in Canada and Mexico, since the U.S. wanted to protect its automotive industry. So while trade barriers are not usually the blunt instruments they once were, they're still with us. And in today's interconnected world, they can make all the difference when it comes to getting a free trade deal over the line.